Okay, good.
because I haven't either.
Yeah, here we go. So this actually, what's cool about it is the book is great, but the PowerPoint, I'm sorry, yeah, the PowerPoint addresses the implementation of the book. So I'm going to pull this up here. So you see that, right? So I'm going to now
Okay.
go into presentation mode. All right, so you see that, correct?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, now I'm gonna get it back out. I'm gonna trick you. I got to get down to the midpoint. So I'll send you this PowerPoint, Ruben.
Okay.
We left off at, I think we did the disc. We were
Yeah,
talking
there's
about.
your
So the
Mhm.
first half of process really focused on you as an individual knowing the importance and wanting to adopt this idea of identifying core processes in your company. So we'll begin with process part 2. And the beautiful thing about this particular session for anybody watching is this is the how-to, right? So whether you read the book or you don't read the book, what you'll learn in the next hour or 45 minutes is going to be related to actually implementing and getting it done. So right now we'll walk through what that looks like. So first off, number one step after you've kind of adopted, like, yes, I'm committed, I want to do this, is you need to identify your core processes. So the way that this chapter works, and I think it's chapter 4, the way this chapter works is they talk about the 20-80 rule. Now, we always talk about 80-20 rule, but it's really the same idea. It's this concept of what 20% of all of our processes have an 80% impact on our business, right? So you can have processes like invoicing a customer, which might be a sub process inside of a bigger process around the life cycle of billing or something like that. So that's part of what this is to say, well, what does that look like? Now, they actually cheat for you in the book, and they say, now keep in mind that everybody has a people process, an HR process. So that's probably one core process. Another one is probably your sales and communication, which is sales and marketing. So there's probably a process around sales, and Charlie and I are very familiar with the Sandler selling process, which is taking people through a pipeline and closing the deal after you've upsold them and all that kind of stuff. So that's a sales process. Marketing might be a little different in that it might be related to, we've identified a message and now we're communicating the message. What is our system for communicating a message? So in our company, marketing has some good systems behind it. We're very, very calendar driven. People are kind of amazed at how we market our services. So we made a point that would be a critical component of our process improvement. The last one is financial. So it's accounting and reporting. So controls around financials, but also reporting around financials. So they kind of help you with that. And they say, here's 4 that everybody has. And we kind of see that when we use an EOS tool, right? So
can I,
yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? Does it talk any about like the staffing and like maybe for example, a position that has a high turnover should be documented before one that, you've got somebody that's been doing it forever or that kind of thing at all?
I mean, they talk about it, but really the way they talk about it is who owns it, right? Okay. So just like when we work on any kind of assignment or project, a big rock or a to-do, if it has more than one name, it has no names. If it has no names, it has no names, right? So there has to be one name assigned an owner of the process. The last piece I just brought up here was Ops 1, Ops 2, Ops 3. So if you think about it, we'll get into this in a minute, but there's the proven process inside EOS, and then there's core processes. The proven process is really your customer experience. So when you're doing your VTO or you're creating your vision for your company, it's like, what's the experience of a customer? That's a proven process. Core processes, you could almost take that proven process and break it down into how you make the sausage, right? And that
Yeah.
becomes your ops 1, ops 2, ops 3. So if I want to have the best event rental company in the world, I would be focusing on the customer experience, but then break it into the 3 ops, you know, 10 installation, job costing, you know, whatever you want to build into that particular first process you're going to document. So anyway, this is really funny because I find process improvement to be the most horrible, boring thing in the world. But this book actually does a good job with it. So I'm really impressed by it. So here we go. So what you're going to do with your leadership team is you're going to brainstorm your core processes. So you can kind of see what happened here on this note. I had to cut and paste it because I loved how they did it. Was, you know, how about this? How about that? How about this? So you're just throwing out all the elements of your company, and slowly you start to figure out that, wow, we really have sub processes inside of our processes. So that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing them saying, well, invoicing is a good process to know, but we're going to put it inside of accounting, and accounting is going to involve invoicing, right? So it's kind of like take a step back and say, you know, here's what we're going to document first. We're going to do the 20/80 and try to get the bigger picture down, right? So that's what's happening here. The one thing that they brought out in the book, and I love all the little things. This is your favorite. I love that crap. So ready, aim, aim, aim. The perfection is the enemy of progress, Winston Churchill. So I love fake it till you make it. Like I was working with a rental operation in Monterey, California last week. And, you know, I slam dunked the VTO in because they were going to get stuck on it for at least a month and a half. And I'm like, just let's stick something in there. And that's what they're saying here is like, don't get hung up, start the process. Don't stop before you start, right? Which happens a lot with these types of things.
It's almost like the writing exercise my kids do where you just start writing. Like it doesn't even matter what you're writing, just start writing.
Exactly. You know, you hear about the songwriters who like 2:00 on every afternoon, they start writing their song, you know, whether they have anything or not, they're getting the work in, right? So,
yeah.
So this is just what I mentioned earlier, difference between a core process and a proven process. Proven process is the customer experience. I love that. It took me about 6 months to understand that was the case. And so a lot of my customers, as well as myself, we struggled with documenting our proven process. Now we've got it. I don't care about our consulting. I don't care about our insurance sales work. I focus on the customer experience inside peer groups. And that's our proven process. So we look at that. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2, now we get into documenting and simplifying the core processes. So another one, Steve Jobs, simple can be harder than complex. You must work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. Absolutely true. You know, you've got to like certainly start and just realize that the end result will probably be simple. So you just want to continue to hone it, work it until you say, wow, that took us a lot of time, but it was something that was right before our eyes. This is what it looks like. It's going to be a simple solution. So they get into that and they say, you know, how do we get started in it? And like, how do we know that we've hit a success point? It's not a to-do. It's almost not even a rock, right? So they're saying you have to strengthen your process component by adding this to a 1-year plan. So it could be a simple statement in your goals, right? So if you think about your annual planning, you have your financial goals and your metrics, but then you get into like, what do I want to have accomplished by this time next year? So they're saying, use the phrase, core processes are documented, simplified, and FBA. Does anybody know what FBA means? Said it last time.
I know, I do.
Followed by all.
Followed by all, that's right.
Hey, Charlie, you get a point. I'm impressed. All right. So followed by all. So So first thing, the other thing is, as you're reading this book, you're realizing like, oh my gosh, how this all starts is simply observing. So that's why in my company, I'm focusing on Anne, our latest employee who came on board in October, and Charlie, who came on board in the spring, because Zoe and I have been part of it forever. And so we don't quite see it the same way. So let's observe the process. This is one of the reasons why people bring in outside help, right? If you think about it, you could take an intern from the local college and have them come in and observe and, hey, document a process, document the process for me. Actually works pretty well. So, you know, some free consulting ideas there if you have access to a local school.
You know, one of the ones that Jim Vanderweer did years ago, Dan, was he had a consultant come in and the person counted the number of steps that a person in the warehouse did to like get a table from the rack onto the truck. And they just did that with every aspect of it and then honed in on it and, you know, redesigned the warehouse, like did all kinds of stuff around that. It's the same thing.
She was, I actually have her PowerPoint still from 7 years ago. So it was a Six Sigma, like everything in its right place.
Right, exactly.
This 5 S's or whatever, sort and, you know, simplify and all that kind of stuff. So same thing, like, you know, some student might be going through that class and you might be the perfect example for them for their paper. They come through and do all this free work for you. I will also share that we do have rental operations that are in peer groups who have spent money with consultants to document all their processes.
I was about to ask, are there people out there that will do that for pay?
Yes.
You know,
so I don't recommend it per se, because I feel like it creates tons of paper and I'm not sure, I haven't seen the result. Now I will tell you, after saying that, these are 2 of our largest operators inside peer groups, and they're super happy with the results. So whatever it cost was worth it. They actually documented the process very quickly. I will tell you, Ruben, not to get grabby, but if you would like somebody from peer groups to document your processes, I mean, Phil Morera is a process fool, right? Okay. So he is he's a flow chart process guy. The guy who just jumped on, Patrick Tunnicliffe's probably 5 times better than Phil. No offense, Phil. But again, going back to how you observe and then document what you observe, right? Yeah. So definitely think about it. So
good. Yeah, definitely. Patrick and I have already been talking a little bit about it.
Oh, good. Yeah, there he is. So I would say, like, so these are the steps that, and I know I've seen Patrick in action. This is what he goes through. What is the specific objective of the process? So you start with the who, what, where, why, right? What is the objective of that particular process? Patrick, before you joined, we talked about HR, financial, and some of the basic ones everybody has. But then we also said inside of there's probably 3 operational core processes you could look at as the first ones to start with.
Yeah, Ruben and I were chatting about some other language, but you nailed it.
Yeah. So second thing is, so if I know the objective of the process, next is what's the first step and the last step. So you're really saying, like, what's the expected result? And they actually, inside the book, they give you so many tools. That's why I love the EOS books. In the back, they kind of say, like, and I forget what they called it. I'll get to it in this session, but it's kind of like, what do you want? Like, and you start with the end in mind, and that becomes the first box that you document is the last step, actually. This is it, consistently getting the results we want now. So you're looking at what is it you want to get, and then you basically evaluate, are you getting the results we want now? I can tell you, and I'm sure Charlie's thinking about this right now, we have some processes inside of peer groups which need some honing for this reason. If we were to metrically manage, we would see that we are not getting the results we want as much as we want it. Like, we don't think everything's perfect, but we can improve it. Next question is, what are the keys to success? So what do we need to do to make sure that we know we're doing the right things to get to the finish line. So in the case of, let's say booking a meeting for a peer group, what are the most important pieces to that to make sure that that meeting is done properly? And for us, it would be that we do it early enough. Like we start the process early enough because we know all the steps involved with booking a hotel and organizing and making sure everything's good for that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So next one, what causes problems? You will find the hindrances. A good one for me is tent installation. My gosh, I mean, if you think about every circumstance where you've installed a tent this year, and maybe you don't have tents. You have tents though, right?
We do, yeah. we
Okay.
do.
So, you can say, well, what went wrong when? And you can literally make a list.
Mhm.
And so for me, identifying those problems. So notice all these questions, we're not flow charting out anything yet. Everything
Yeah.
is about answering certain questions and getting a better understanding of the process. This last part, if you can't explain it simply, you just don't understand it well enough. So if we are struggling to describe it, like when we're training Ann or training Charlie on something, we're not going to get it right. So that was a Albert Einstein quote from that chapter. So observe, number one. Number two, they say create a simple checklist. And I had to put Checklist Manifesto up there because it constantly comes up. I don't know who this author is, where he comes from. I have no idea. But in this book, they tell some great stories. And of course, in true EOS fashion, it's stolen for the traction books. But the 5 steps to reduce infection in a hospital was a great example of having a checklist that's out there and used can create very different results. In the case of air travel, pre-flight checklists were something that once they started had a huge impact, right? So this idea of thinking about it from a checklist perspective. And so inside peer groups, we try to talk about checklists and creating it. And hey, if I want to take a month off, I want someone else to pick up where I left off, I've got to give it to them in the form of a checklist. So this is the getting what you want piece from EOS. There's actually a link here on YouTube, so I'll send you the PowerPoint. You can click on this. Also, page 153 of the book actually has like the boxes I talked about, where you begin with the end in mind and put your expectation in the last box. And then there's actually a website called omg.org, and that also addresses this issue once you've observed and once you've started your checklists, right? So those are the first 2 steps. The last step, and then we'll take a quick break to talk about it. That's a horrible picture, by the way. I don't know why it's pixelated, but package them easy, make them easy to find and use. So real change, enduring change happens 1 step at a time. The issue here is a real one. My employee, Ann, has verbalized this over and over and over. I can't find it. Right? I can't
She's
find
not
it.
the only one.
It's like, okay, are we using Teams? Okay, well, how is
So
Teams
strange to
structured?
hear.
Are we using Teams the right way? Do we, we create these worlds that we live in, Google Drives and Microsoft OneDrive. And, I want to move to Tranual. I love Tranual. I want to have that be part of where we're going with all these processes. But right now we've created some processes and our employees can't find them to see what the steps are. So that's pretty brutal. So packaging is addressed in that chapter, and it's pretty cool. So
The days of having the 3-ring binder on the shelf might have been good.
Yeah, they're right there. There's our processes.
Right, yeah.
This is another horrible picture. I should definitely not do this on my phone, right? I should build out a PowerPoint on shows you how comfortable I am when I'm building PowerPoints on my phone instead of on the computer. But so yeah, flowcharts, so find the right format, medium or platform, whatever it is. And you see some listed here that we talked about. And that becomes your home, and it becomes something you commit to as a company. And there's always a better mousetrap. So just be careful about that.
Well, and that's the hard thing. Like, I feel like with any of this stuff, like the platform, you feel like all these processes that you're like talking through, like we can change them and adapt them and all that as we go along. The platform, like once you go down that path, like it's really hard to change, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we've been using Google Drive this whole time, but it's really hard to incorporate or to get to maneuver around. So we're in the process of switching to OneDrive and 365, but that's a big project in and of itself. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, everything is hard. It's like I realized it took me like a year to realize that because we're a Microsoft house, we literally, when we finish any kind of document, we can right mouse click and share it. Like we were spending all of our energy uploading things to Google Drive. It's so stupid. It's
Ruben,
like
just real quick, I'm just curious, was there like a singular impetus for switching from Google Drive to Microsoft or vice versa? Is it boiled down to one thing?
It boiled down to the fact that, just like he was just describing, you'd end up uploading the same files over and over and over, and you end up with multiple copies of the file. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And it was really fascinating. I'm like, if you really want to be lazy, create it one time, have it reside in one spot, and share it from there. Mm-hmm. So anybody who creates anything in Microsoft that's what you can do. OneDrive is it's an automatic drive, right? So anyway, but I like Tranual. I want to move to Tranual now. That's my new
shiny object.
I'll push you. Yeah, I have. I actually did a podcast on Tranual. I'll send it to you, Ruben.
Okay. Well, shoot, Dan, the other one you don't have listed here is 90.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, and there 90, too, because I pulled up Tranual and it looks the same.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't
or similar.
I don't feel comfortable about processes existing in an EOS operating system. I mean, if it was built a little different, where there would be a file structure to it, I might consider it. But even like Teams has a suspect file structure. Right? You can sort of make it happen. I tried to create a wiki inside Teams, and it was pretty comical. But I'm sure if with any practice you can make anything work. You just have to pick one. Yeah. So the first three steps are part of the process, right? So we talked about observe, we talked about checklist, we talked about packaging, and now we're getting into followed by all checklists. So this is like, hey, we've honed our craft, we've gotten it where we want to be now, followed by all, every employee. They talk about the meeting pulse inside this chapter as well. I think we're in chapter 6 at this point. Probably should put these on here. But, the importance of a regular contact around your process, measuring compliance. So there's 3 measuring elements to determining the success of implementation of a core process, and like, hey, we're doing it. We're doing it. We did step 1, 2, and 3. So number 1 is measuring compliance. Are people adhering to it? Are they breaking the rules? Are they staying inside the rules? That's number 1. Number 2, measuring the frequency. So again, on whether it's compliant, non-compliant, or whether it's successful, do we know, what frequency we're looking for that process to be used a certain way? And that could be when you think about checking rental equipment, right? So checking it in, that comes down to a frequency issue, but also outcome. So the last one is measuring outcomes. And so you want to say, what was the result of that? Are you measuring it based on how fast it gets done? Are you measuring it based on what the quality was when it got done? All those types of things, right? So that chapter goes into detail around that. And frankly, it's a critical component, because the last thing you want to do is work on a process you consider core and, have followed by all as one of your goals, and then not not actually, doing those types of measurements to determine it, right? The success of it. So if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And who's that dude? That is, anybody know who that is? That is
that's probably Kelvin.
Kelvin. Yes, Lord Kelvin. Good job.
Yeah,
Impressive.
big fan.
Good, we have smart people with us here. All right, now next up is the measurement around. So they talk about measurements, and this is where they hit the pause and said, let's talk about EOS measurement. And so they go into scorecards. Charlie and I went through our scorecard this week. We're going to be changing it quite a bit. We certainly look at leading indicators, not as many as we should. And we look at lagging indicators. What's the results of what we've done, right? So I would say as you go through your core processes, this could be where you capture it when you do your L10 and your weekly review. One of the things that was really cool for Charlie and I was we started to uncover things like a rolling 4-week and a rolling 13-week result inside of some software that we were using to measure the scoring. And it was like, yeah, we can make use of this. And then of course we have monthly scoring, and we also have quarterly and annual scoring. So doesn't mean that you have everything along the way. It could be that there's different indicators you're looking at different frequencies. So that goes back to what frequency are you measuring? Right. So in the case of real revenue, I want to see 12 months at any given time. I can look at that monthly, but at the end of the day, I'm really looking at how did we perform over the course of a year or a 12-month period. So, so that's one. This one is, we're getting to the end once we get through the second part of the process, right? The core process. And we're looking at leadership, management, and accountability as it relates to the processes. So this is Stephen Covey. Effective leadership is putting first things first, and effective management is discipline, carrying it out. Totally different things, right? So I've been accused of being decent at vision activities and leadership activities, knowing what to prioritize, but not necessarily effective in the discipline of follow through. And that goes back to EOS concepts around rocket fuel and all the other great EOS books. So this book isn't about any of that. This book's about process, but they still haven't managed to touch on these elements. And LMA is leadership, management, and accountability. Leadership plus management equals accountability. Okay, so if anybody has implemented EOS, then they know that one of the things they do on a regular basis is they identify what issues are priorities for them. So, Ruben, do you still do a weekly?
Yeah, we have been doing it. Since we've been moving this month, we have not had one because of all the other stuff going on, but we're resuming it starting tomorrow.
Yeah, we had almost a month off in November, and that was very rough. And now the first couple meetings in December have not been ideal because it seems like we're constantly using the meeting to clean up. And so one of the things that I'm trying to encourage is that we have issues all week long. We just don't have issues one day a week. So use your tools to get your issues identified and put into your whatever tracking device you're using to identify those issues. If you've identified your core processes and you're starting the process of documenting those core processes and packaging them, putting them in the right spot, then hopefully your issues will start to change and some of the issues will alleviate, right? So it's like anything, if you focus on it, work on it, you're going to start to improve that situation. When you're working on process pieces, use the IDS method. This is the issue solving track. You're identifying what the issues are, why is the pain there, what is the pain about, discussing it with your group. This is a critical component that I have a tendency not to do, is, let's have a discussion, not just Dan speak, but let's have other people speak and say, what are their frustrations around this issue? And then, then you take the time to solve it. And there's a lot of ways to solve it. They do not get into this in this chapter, but I'm going to share it with you right now. I went through a lot of training with Michael Gerber in the E-Myth. And one of the things they say when you get to the solve part is to really think of the issue as not related to people in any regard. So what system is missing in my company that's causing that pain or that frustration? So it makes it a system solution. I'm going to implement a system to alleviate this pain. So if it's related to non-performance issues or someone not adhering to the values of the company, it's a system issue. It means that we don't have a recourse built in to address that, whether it be employee review and, you know what I mean? Like all those things. So yeah, you could sit in the meeting and say, well, Charlie didn't do his job, but really it's, well, is anybody holding Charlie accountable to do his job? And if they are, what does that look like? And if it takes its natural course of action, he's going to change his behavior, right? Most cases, or he's going to leave. And that's the other usual result of what you would consider a people issue. So IDSing, again, they do get at the end of the chapter, I put it in here, update the processes regularly. I feel like they put it on a calendar. So it kind of felt like, make a note 6 months from now or 12 months from now, you're going to refresh and look at the process again and see if there's any changes you want to make to the process. So that was a good part of that chapter.
At what point do you go beyond, like you talked at the beginning, the 20/80 rule? Is there a point where you go beyond those initial processes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is. I think you would be able to know that based on the pattern of your IDSing section of your meetings, right? So if the quality of your company is so good, like we have some people who have lists of issues that are, 20, 30 issues. And then we have some people that have like 2 or 3 issues that get resolved and they're empty again. And then some more issues pop up and then they get wiped out. So I think it has a lot to do with the company's ability to truly move through an issue and address it. Like when you have an issue, and Charlie, you know this from how I look at it, like we're talking about this issue, it will not remain an issue. It's going to either become a to-do or it's going to become a rock for somebody to work on. But if we're taking time right now and we have our leadership team talking about it, I don't want to talk about it again. Like this is it. So I think that's a key component. That means you might need to slow down how much you move through. Maybe one of the meetings you're focused on 1 or 2 issues and not 3 or 4. So, but yeah, that's the issues solving track. And again, process improvement, documenting processes, that's what we're really looking at here. So action planning came next, and it was really about commitment. I don't know if we're going to talk about priority management here, but that to me is everything. We have a thing inside of our peer groups in teams, which Patrick set up, which was every day we're going to do a huddle. And in the huddle, every morning, instead of a huddle where we're physically getting together, it's a virtual huddle where it's like, hey, tell me what your 3 priorities are today. So this goes back to like how I want to start my week. I want to block my time if I can. If I'm working the counter, then I'm blocking my time that I'm working the counter. But if I'm not working the counter or I have time to do other things, then I want to block my time to work on those other things. preparing for a book club. Like I'm the guy, I never read this book. I put it on, my calendar and said, I'm going to do a book club on this book. It's forced me to read the book, right? It forced me then to learn the material because I had to create a PowerPoint. So I can tell you that, over the course of the year, I ended up reading 4 books that I've internalized and built book clubs out of. I'm going to do it again next year because it ensures that I'm reading 4 books. Otherwise, I'm not going to learn anything, right?
Right.
So to me, commitment is number one, but number two with it is how you establish your priorities around it and do the work you're supposed to do. Some people pay consultants because paying that bill or writing that check makes them do the work, right? So if all the consulting was free, you would never get it done. Charlie knows I'm looking at a consultant right now, $5,000 for 6 hours. He wants me to commit to 8 days. So I'm looking at $40,000 out of pocket on a consultant. And I'm like, okay, this is scaring the crap out of me. So it's either going to happen and I'm going to do this stuff and get it done. And it's going to cost me money, but I'm certainly going to have it done. Right. So I think that's part of whatever you need to do to motivate yourself to commit. Every person who makes a choice to come into peer groups, that's essentially what they're doing. They're saying, I got to go meet with these people twice a year. It takes me away from my daily activity, but hopefully I get a return on that investment, right? So. All right. So the commitment is to do this. So 3-step process documenter. We had a couple people join us on the previous call. And I do know some people that were on the last book club that are now starting process improvement. So this is what I'm looking for them to commit to. Make this part of your action plan, right? So inside peer groups, we say you have 3 action items for the spring, 3 for the fall. I would like to see anybody who's looking at this and say, all right, I'm going to go through the 3-step process documenter for my core processes. And I'm going to start by doing 1, right? Take 1 of the core processes and I'm going to go through this process. So that means you're going to have to prioritize and put blocks of time on the out there for yourself to do it. Now, identifying and documenting, we talked about using outside help. I'm not telling you not to do that. I honestly think that's probably the best way to do it. In my mind, if I go back to Anne, who's the newest employee, and I say, Anne, I want you to identify the steps. What's she going to do? She's going to ask a whole bunch of questions of Zoe, of me, of Charlie. She's going to identify them. It's going to naturally be documented. We're going to review it and say, that's right, that's wrong, whatever it might be. But we're getting it to a place where, like, to me, we supplement 1 and 2. Somebody's got to do some of the heavy lifting to get that piece done. So it could be a consultant, could be an employee, could be you as the owner. So you just have to decide how you're going to get through those steps. So number 1, this is all it is. So whether you're using outsider or whether you're using so an outsider like a consultant or an intern, or it's somebody inside like yourself, go through this process. And if you don't have the leadership team together, you can use an outsider interviewing each of the leadership teams. Hey, what do you see as a core process? And then, they might need a little coaching on that. What does that mean? So you walk through it. But then you saw that we brainstorm it, we go through, and it's important that you name the process, because if you name the process and you put a person's name next to it and the why, that's the key, right? Why is this an important process? Who owns it? Ultimately, who is the owner of it? And it also helps you. Now you're starting to see this structure build where you're creating a table of contents for your core process manual, right? So love it that they give you these steps. That's why I like the book. It moves. Second half of the book is all about doing it. So this is the document and simplify portion, which just says create the plan, observe that particular core process, evaluate, document, simplify it, review it, and then approve it, right? So it's just a step to follow. You can literally put this on your calendar in a block and say, I'm going to spend an hour doing this, I'm going to spend an hour doing that, and move your way through it by putting these 6 items out there, right? The end, you got it. Now, it could be that you started it in Word or you put it in Excel. I think, Charlie, I saw that you started building Gantt charts, right, on the customer
Excel.
Experience, right?
Yeah,
So,
the meeting planning.
Meeting planning, yeah. So giant, how many steps in the meeting plan?
A
18?
shit ton.
But yeah,
A
but you
lot.
had them, right? So
Yeah, they're all there.
what's cool is not
Wait,
only
we
did-
haven't gone through the simplify step yet. We
Bingo.
still have that one out there.
So what Charlie did was he did it one time with Zoe, documenting it. And then he knew that there were 18 groups meeting at 18 different dates. So because there was a time element of getting from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, so that on the day that the meeting takes place, everything goes smooth, it created this giant spreadsheet
Flowchart,
calendar.
Spreadsheet.
So Zoe can wake up this week and say, it's the week of December 4th, 5th, or whatever it is. And this week, here's what I got to do for all 18 meetings. Some of them are going to come in March. Some are going to be in May. So I don't need to work on everything in May. I need to work on the ones that are getting ready sooner. So that's the idea. But now you have to decide where it's going to sit. And they also like for you to name it. So you see, for example, the ABC Company Way. There's a company called Lepo Rents, and they have the Lepo Way, right? So how they do a certain thing has a name. The peer group experience, or whatever it might be, right? So we need to come up with a name for it. And then the last part is, obviously make it easy for everybody to find. Ideally, it's part of your dashboard and there's a link. So I've actually seen situations from my past back in the 90s where the master core process flow chart is up on the right corner. And then, so it's always visible in the right corner. And then you're working through sub processes, but you can kind of see up in the right where it fits into the full picture. To me, that's ideal, right? Optimally, you're going to be looking at, the processes are easily accessible and available, whether it's on your dashboard or on your desktop or whatever it might be, but easy access to it. All right. So I forget how far along we are here. I think it feels like
You're
we're
at
near
47 minutes.
Oh gosh. All right, let's move. So don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So what does that say? I love goal setting. It's awesome. We do a great job trying to reach our goals. At the end of the day, if we don't have the systems in place, we are not going to reach our goals. So you literally need to, I love this James Clear. This dude's young. I've never seen a young thought leader. So it's kind of interesting to me. Although he is bald, which is good for me. And I will say that most thought leaders are bald, Charlie. So remember your
I'm
elders.
screwed.
Yeah. So don't rise. So excellent work here. This guy, James Clear, man, I did a deep dive. I love Atomic Habits. That's probably going to be a big focus next year for me. But I'm all over this guy's YouTube stuff. And it's nice because you're going with the wave. What are your habits? Let's go. Let's stay focused on your good habits and let's just rock them. Let's do a great job with them. So from this perspective, it's nice to have these great goals, but you need to build the systems behind it in order for you to have the success. So complete the followed by all checklist is the point of this chapter, which is simply, I'm just going to quickly rifle through these. Train everyone who does one or more of the steps should be part of this. And again, pick the right way to do it, whether it's Tranual or whether you do it in person, virtual, whatever. Encourage pushback and also verify understanding and commitment. Measures, step number 2, also repeat yourself often as necessary. Step number 2 is measure. So again, measure for compliance. Are we doing it right? Measure for frequency. Are we doing it often enough to get the desired results? How frequently do you want to measure this? And then for outcome, are we getting the result we want? And measuring for frequency is like an example of, I want to have OSHA testing, right? I don't want OSHA to come in and test me, but I want to establish where every 6 months OSHA's coming in, or an OSHA consultant's coming in, or I'm got my own checklist, and we're going to look at our warehouse, and we're going to look at how, you know, the loading docks are set up and all that kind of stuff. I'm thinking of Ruben in your recent move, right? Outcome. Are we getting the results we want? Determine all the who, what, and where around that particular process. That's again at the very onset. Last one, manage, lead and manage in a way that drives accountability. Support the team members as the behaviors change. So give them good feedback, reward and recognize when people have made changes and improve. That's part of your leadership. Lastly, this is continuous improvement, right? Whatever you got to do to build continuous improvement in this case, they're saying at least annually be looking at it and engage your team and repeat your checklist item, which is part of how you're going to look at improving it. So that's the update piece. Last piece, overcoming challenges. I'm just going to fly through it. These are the things that stop us and we don't need to even get into it, but lack of passion, lack of expertise, develop the knowledge and skills of your existing team, right? That's a challenge. Find or hire someone with relevant experience. Now, I will say these last two, I'm going to pause for 1 second. It can be frustrating for a leader. If a leader is going down this path and they don't feel like their employees are going to jump right in to the deep end, you need to figure out a path where you can pause and move with little baby steps and success. Like Ruben, you've had, L10s going on for quite some time. You've exposed people. So you're going to have a little bit more success than somebody who's just starting, right? So it's going to take time for everybody involved. Partner with a process firm or expert. So those are what we talked about earlier, bringing in somebody from us or having an intern or something like that. Love of complexity or perfection is actually going to slow you down. So be aware that, perfection is the enemy of good enough. So just be aware that over-reliance on technology, don't get sucked in.
Back to the platform.
Yeah, Patrick Tunnicliffe used to scare the crap out of us. He'd be like, hey, we should be using this. And it's like, what is that? Thinking back on it, it's all good. We probably could have used it, but it was just too quick. Like we just did not thinking of Ensera or whatever it was. What was that called?
Asana
Yeah.
project management for our
our
projects.
That was some sweet stuff. Now a year later, I'm like ready. Lack of leadership, again, that's part of it. Are you bringing consistent leadership vision to the team? No or poor training, no or poor measurement, that's a big one. And then of course, avoidance of accountability. And then the last one is definitely a Dan Crowley ism, and that is kind of syndrome, which means we kind of documented and we kind of measure and we kind of run our L10s, right? So I think that we have to make sure that we are thorough. If your behavioral profile does not lend yourself to it, put someone else in place as your integrator, right? Your implementer. We have so many rental operators out there who are both the visionary and the integrator. It's so hard for them. It's just, you see them struggling a lot more than if you're able to, pick your poison, one or the other.
Dan, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Kind of a side note. What's the best way to onboard somebody who's coming in brand new, doesn't know anything about EOS or this, and they're kind of a up and coming manager, and to get them on board on all of this? That's the fastest way to do it.
So the fastest way to do it, I believe, is utilizing focus day tools. So if you remember from when trying to find that flow, I don't think that's it, but if you remember when you first started with traction in EOS, they have you do a focus day, and in the case of peer groups, we actually have a PowerPoint called Focus Day, which we can send you. And what this does is it takes you through an orientation about traction and EOS and implementation. And every one of these slides usually has a YouTube connected to it. And so by the time you're done this, there's only 12 slides in our Focus Day slide deck, but this actually takes like 3 hours. So it becomes like a training tool. So in the case of Ann Nur starting in October, we push her the Focus Day and say, look, you're going to get confused by what we're doing. So get up to speed, click on these one by one, and you'll see leadership abilities, and then click on this, and then that YouTube is an EOS YouTube video that kind of walks through it. So that would be my recommendation, because it just, by the time they get done this, they're ready to join an L10, right? So
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. Look.
I would
Send that to
I would love
Ruben when you send the one you're going through right now.
Yeah.
yeah, I'll
I
send
would
this
like
to
a
you.
copy of that too, Dan.
Yeah, I'll send to you, Beth. And certainly we do this. So like, and I think in Beth's case, yeah, I might not have sent this to you, but in anybody who's looking to start with us with Prestige and EOS, the Focus Day is step one. And we make everybody go through this. Usually we're watching it together and we're in the room together, and because there's a couple activities at the end. But it allows everybody to get up to speed, and then we take a break, and then we come back and we do Vision Day or annual planning, depending on the timing of the year. I just did one in Virginia where we did vision planning after Focus, and now going into January, we're going to get together and do the annual planning. But cool. Any other questions? I appreciate, you let me run late like this. Oh, I got a couple minutes still.
You're good.
So
Copy me on that email to Ruben and Beth when you send that out, would you?
absolutely. Absolutely. I'll get that to you. And anybody watching this video, if you reach out to us, we can get you this Focus Day deck. Beth, I will also make sure that you have the slide deck, the PowerPoints. So if you don't want to watch the video.
Apologize. I had a pre-scheduled thing and I couldn't get out of it. So it was a little,
No, I appreciate it. And the key is to get the slide deck. I mean, obviously we all read the book, or we can read the book. We can listen to the tape.
I did finish the book. I did it on
Wow.
Audible, so I got through that before.
There you go. You're ahead of
That's what I was
Dan.
gonna say.
But one of the things that I just went and ordered the hard copy of the book too, because there's so many things that they, in a book like that
Yeah.
they talk about this process and that process.
You want to see it
And
on
the other
paper,
thing is they
right?
say it's in the tools, and I'm like, I don't even know how to get the tools. I've gone through Audible, I've gone back, I've tried to see where I can find it, but if you have it here and you can highlight back to the highlights, so I'm gonna.
So
that's-
the cool thing, and I'll just quickly show you this, is the Kindle version. I always get the ebook as well.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I have
can
it.
find it.
so.
Kindle Reader. But the cool thing about, oh, here it is. So this is my little library, right? So when you go into this book, and this is one of the reasons why you should always buy a book, because especially these guys, they
Yeah.
give you so many toys.
Yeah,
Like,
I did
it's
that.
like the templates and the resources that are literally linked in the back. I mean, there had to be like, there's all sorts of self-tests, and then there's all these like, answer these questions, fill in all this stuff. So you're seeing like a tremendous amount of resources. They give you examples of walking through the 3-step process documenter, which, who, facilitated by, what, summaries, so you're like, oh, so I could just take the template and do, go through these, and they do step by step, like, here's what you need to do each step. So absolutely, like even the Audible is great, but then you're like, I want the
I know.
tools. And there's all
Needed
these
the
hot,
tools.
Yeah.
they even have the hot links inside the book to the tools, right? So
And I did that
Um,
with Traction. I have Traction and I have a hard copy back. You gave me my first version of it, but then I got it in Kindle and then I also have it.
yeah.
So Audible doesn't have these same things, right?
They just read the whole thing and then they tell you can go find these, but
Yeah.
it's like I hate to be honest with you, I'm driving the car and then like 2 hours later, I'm like, where were those tools? Where was that? I want to go
Yeah,
back and find them.
I mean, they do a good job of trying to make sure you get the tools. So they're like, go to this website and da da da. So they do tell you, but it's just to me for $10, on Kindle, I'd just rather have it available. I can just click on it. But anyway, so appreciate everybody making it, and definitely let's keep in touch on it. I'd love to see anybody's progress into 2023. If anybody's going to document a process or something, that would be something to share. And by the way, if you're joining a peer group or part of a peer group, use it as your idea contest going forward. If you've had success, right? Something that's worked out. So I follow these steps and I document my processes.
Change the
You
world.
know how much I love the idea contest, Dan. So
Come on.
Everybody
I love
has a
idea
love-hate relationship with the idea contest.
Yeah. Well, I have a real idea contest. My meeting next week with my peer group is $100 per person. And Ami Kassar is going as my number 2. So we each have to pony up $100. I hope he doesn't think I'm paying. And then we have to present. There's 12 of us in the room to get the money. So that's going to be, have never won with that group, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
All right,
I gotta
everybody.
jump off.
Yep.
Thanks,
Take care,
guys.
guys.
Hey guys, appreciate it.
Appreciate
man.
it. Yep.
See you,
you
Patrick.
guys, bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care now. See you.